They were my biggest customer. They were my most difficult customer. They made everyone's life miserable, and I fought so hard to keep them. Welcome to Executive Evolution. I have over 25 years of leadership experience in corporate America. I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, and I created this podcast so that you won't have to. Early on in my career, I landed a whale of a client. It was a huge deal, probably one of the two events that really set the path for my career. But the person who was the point of contact at that client had a lot of things going on with themselves. Very difficult client, made our customer service people miserable, would find my home number and call and demand things. It was really problematic. And in retrospect, I really wonder how good of a thing it was. My company had the support to keep pushing forward on this client. Our operations people were less happy with it. And I really wonder if it was the right thing for the company. Today, I think I may have taken a different tack on that and really demanded from that person's leadership that they change if we were going to continue our partnership together. But to young Craig with his first big deal, that deal was paramount to me. On today's episode of Executive Evolution, I'm joined by Cassie Dunn, the managing partner at Haines, Isenbarger Skiba LLC, an accounting firm in Fort Wayne, Indiana. One of the things she talks about is the importance of culture fit, not just on her team and the leadership team, but also a cultural fit with the clients that they have. So let's jump right in to hear the story of her executive evolution. Cassie, welcome to the Executive Evolution podcast. Thanks for being on today.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
I'm very excited. We've had an opportunity to work together, even though you are way far away up in the world of Fort Wayne, Indiana, which for those of you who don't know, Indianapolis is a good 2.5 hours away. But I'm glad to have you here and to hear the story of your executive evolution. So are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready for the lightning round.
All right, let's jump right in. First question, best book on leadership you've ever read?
So I'm going to be honest, I am terrible about actually finishing leadership books. But I think
Okay.
the favorite book I've ever read, I'm currently reading. I'm in the middle of a 3-part biography of Winston Churchill written by William Manchester. In total, It ends up being about 2,500 pages. And I've read about 1,600 of those 2,500 right now. It's entitled The Last Lion.
Wow. So go ahead.
It's excellent. Now, what's interesting about Winston Churchill as a leader is he was actually a terrible boss, but he was a phenomenal leader. I am super into it right now. Obviously, I've read 1,600 pages over the summer and into the fall. So
that's great. Yeah. The only one I've ever persevered through of like big historical figure autobiographies was the Teddy Roosevelt. I've read like 3 Teddy Roosevelt ones because it was just like, and for him, I think it's like he's more of an incredible person. Relative to a leader, I mean, good leader too, but his personal story is so fascinating. But Churchill because wasn't he kind of a failure and then became prime minister? Wasn't that kind of his arc?
Yeah, he had been in parliament forever, but during the 30s, he was what was called out of the government in Great Britain. He wasn't in the cabinet. So he was still in parliament, but he really had no voice. And during all of the 30s, he was basically screaming at the top of his lungs, Hitler's bad, Germany's a problem, we need to not be cutting defense spending, we need to be ramping up defense spending. And basically everybody put their hands over their ears and didn't listen until France fell. And they were like, oh no, we need a guy. Oh, good, we have one.
We've got a guy. And sometimes that's leadership. Maybe you're not the guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was able to really mobilize the country and bring everyone together for a common vision.
Love it. Oh, yeah. Man, I have to check that out or at least watch a movie about him.
There's a great biographical film you can find from that. Like I said, somewhere around 2,500 pages I'm into right now.
That's a read for sure. Okay. Question number 2. Who is your leadership crush?
Told you that's the one I'm having a hard time with, Craig. I don't know that I have one. I am involved in a group here in the Fort Wayne area of local women business leaders. And probably I would say I have a crush on all of them. A number of the people that went before me and made what I'm doing possible.
Yeah, talk about the value of kind of that group coaching experience, because I have one down here for like not-for-profit leaders too, but talk about why that is so helpful for you to invest time. You're a busy person.
I am a busy person, and so many of the people that have done what I do aren't also wives and mothers. They might be husbands and fathers, but from where I sit, wives and mothers have a whole different plate of food in front of them, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice to talk to people who are either doing it right now alongside me or have already done it, have true peers who are leading businesses in my area going through the same things has been really helpful as I've navigated this.
Yeah, I find so often that when we're kind of in that leadership chair, problems happen. We're like, oh my gosh, what is this? This has never happened before. How do I get through it? And then you get around a group of peers and you find out, well, it's just new to you. And people have survived it and people have kind of found solutions. And that's what's so, I think, helpful about those groups is they give you perspective and support in a way that I don't think you can get in many other circumstances.
That's absolutely how I feel about it. One of the biggest questions we've actually been wrestling with probably in the last 3 months within our firm is who we define as my peers.
Oh, nice. How so? Like where is that trying to figure out? Where are you guys at with that?
We're still wrestling with it a little bit. I have a core group of leaders within my firm that I kind of use as my sounding board internally. Like I said, I have the group I told you about that I use a little bit externally. The question came around because I was invited to join like a CEO consortium type group. And the sell was, it's a group of your peers that can help hold you accountable. But I was going to be the only female in the group. And I was going to be the only person leading a financial services type firm in the group. And so the real question was, are those other CEOs in that group truly my peers? Are they going to be wrestling with the same questions I wrestle with?
Yeah. And that's a tricky thing in the group is to get the right balance. And also, because you probably don't also want a group of people all in your local area, all who run the same kind of business you run.
Right.
Because you're pilfering each other at that point, right? And so it's a difficult balance to strike. So do you see as an opportunity for that something bigger? Like if it were a national Zoom-based group versus a local group, is that something that might be more attractive?
That is what we're leaning. Our Indiana Society has tried to put something together, and we didn't get the first cohort. We just had some other stuff going on that we were focusing on on the firm at the time. But we think going forward, that would probably be our best bet is other local similar sized firms, but not local to our area.
Right. Yeah. Really interesting. Okay. Final question. In the lightning round, in 10 words or less, how do you define leadership?
Okay, I've got this one. Empowering others to grow and do their best work.
I love it. And that has been such a story for you because when we first met, you were taking over your firm that you own now, and you had a whole team, and you had to find a way to make that happen through all this transition and change. And then subsequently, as we've caught up, a lot of growth too. Yeah.
Since you met me, my firm has almost doubled, both in from a revenue perspective, but also from a number of employees, number of clients, everything has doubled.
Yeah. Wow. So that has really that's a challenge, I think, in so many ways, because now you probably had to have significantly more staff and you had this really great culture that you'd built and great teamwork and everybody worked well together. How do you keep that together as you scale?
We were very lucky. A big part of our growth came from an acquisition of another firm. However, the firm we acquired, the partner in that firm had worked in my firm previously. So came from a very similar background, started with Ernst & Young in their Big Four days, which is where I came from, which is where the partners that came before me came from. And then she also worked in the firm that I own and then went out and started her own firm, which I then acquired and folded all of them back in. So we were able to acquire a firm that had a very similar culture. I wouldn't say exactly the same culture, but a very similar culture and was led by someone who came from a very similar background. Okay. And so we were very fortunate that the culture shock wasn't that shocking.
Yeah. And as a learning from that experience, and who knows what you might do in the future, but we always talk about due diligence when we buy companies. And usually that means we look at books, we look at all those kind of business things. How big of a lift do you think it's going to be to figure out what the culture is of an organization before you were to make an acquisition in the future, if you were?
I do think that's a big deal. I think, one, I would say we learned that we would maybe want to do a little bit more due diligence on the financials as well. But it's all worked out fine. We've figured out a procedure and we're getting there to make sure fees are aligned and client expectations are aligned and things like that. Yeah. Culture, to me, that is the biggest part, because truly in the accounting world right now, if we do another acquisition, it's going to be because we need to acquire talent, not necessarily because we need to acquire clients. I mean, we would obviously keep some portion of clients from who an acquisition target. But primarily, we would be looking for experienced hires who were good at the work that we do. And so I think almost all of our due diligence, again, would be trying to, I think it would be a lot of, I don't know if you'd call them interviews, but definitely meetings, peer-to-peer meetings, peer-to-supervisor meetings, all sorts of stuff like that, trying to determine if everyone believed it was a good culture fit.
Yeah. And what's that like for leaders today? Because, I don't have a big team, but I know a lot of people in bigger businesses, especially specialized areas like accounting, where you have kind of this discrete set of talents and services. You guys are like Liam Neeson. I have a very specific set of talents. How hard is it right now to find the talent for a growing business in your area?
Specifically in my area, it's horrible. I don't know if you've heard, but if you're an accountant geek like I am, it's all over the news that we read, which is the news that no one else on the planet reads. It tells you there's an accountant shortage, that for the last half a decade or so, universities have been cranking out not nearly enough accountants to fill the roles that are coming up. At one point, we're about at the end of it, kind of what they saw as the cliff, if you will, where they were saying, this, we're 50,000 short a year. So after 5 years, we're going to be 250,000 accountants short in the US. And we're right about there. So it is very difficult. Especially if you're doing new hires, you have to think outside the box. You have to hire non-accounting majors and try to turn them into accountants, basically. So you take business majors and economics majors and finance majors, and you try to teach them accounting, or you acquire a firm that already has some.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. I would love to understand those dynamics better when you look at who's coming out of the universities, who all have ideas that they want to go work for big banks or big financial services firms. Those jobs probably aren't there right now. So then how do you convince them to say, hey, let me introduce you to the very sexy world of accounting?
Well, whether they have an accounting degree or not, even when we're talking to kids going into college to sell accounting degrees, but coming out, that accounting is a decision-making discipline. Mm-hmm. The major is. There's not a career path on earth where learning how to make decisions isn't going to improve your performance. No matter what you want to be when you grow up, if you will, working in public accounting, especially for a while, is going to give you a background that has value. And it's teaching you a skill that, to your point, even when the markets turn, even when things get slow, people still need tax returns prepared.
Right.
Everyone still needs financial statements. In fact, sometimes the need for like audits or reviews of financial statements go up because more entities are having to borrow more. And therefore, banks are requiring they have, an independent public accounting firm look at their books and records. We're not 100% recession proof, but we do have an element of that.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Let's swing back to talking about leadership, because it certainly sounds like you've got your challenges. So tell me, Cassie, what was your first leadership role?
So my husband and I actually disagreed about this last night when we were talking about it. He thinks it was in college when I was a coxswain on the rowing team.
Sure.
Which arguably is a pretty intense leadership role. I thought it was in high school. I was a captain on the cross country team.
Okay. Well, which did you pick?
I think I'm going to go with cross country, and there is a reason for that.
All right. So tell me about it.
So I was a captain on the cross country team. I was not that good of a runner. I was an okay runner. And I had said all along, I'd always told my dad, I said, if we're ever going to come out of sectional, if we're ever going to be a regional qualifying team, I can't be a top 3 runner on this team. I need to at best be a number 5 runner in this team. And my senior year, I was the captain, and I was the number 5 runner on the cross. And we finally made it to regional. And I just think it was a great opportunity to learn how to lead without being the fastest. I wasn't the best. Right. I wasn't the most talented. I wasn't leading out every practice, but I was still leading the team.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting, because we always, sometimes I think it's a joke, but I think it's also very real that like the best sales leaders are not your best salespeople. Mm-hmm. And, that's somewhat of the story there. So what did you bring to the table that kind of helped push you down to the 5th best runner from the 3rd best runner? Was it like we were just talking about? Was it recruiting talent? What did you have to do? A
little bit. We had a couple of freshmen that ran 1 and 2 that year. And that was a huge part of how we were able to do that. And my role was encouraging them. You don't need to run behind the upperclassmen. We need you to run the way you can run. Yeah. We need you to get out and race. The one girl she had 1 pace. Now, it was blisteringly fast. We still ran a 4K in Indiana at the time, over a 4K. But we were trying to get her to sprint. I could sprint. And it was, literally coming up behind her and pushing her during practices on sprint workouts, just stuff like that, where I was trying to encourage, you got to get faster than me. You need to be faster than me. We need you to go. And that kind of, and I had a good work ethic. I worked hard, and leading by working hard and convincing others to work hard.
Okay. And when you think about that time and that period in your life around leadership, what did you pull away from that as key lessons?
I mean, I think obviously I learned some humility and leadership from that. Whether you wanted to or not, that was going to be a lesson that came away from that. And just the value of people working together for the good of everyone. Nobody was out for themselves. We had one girl who was going to make it out on her own, out of sectional, but it was going to be way better if we could all go together.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think about, as you talk about how you've kind of pulled teams together since then, that resonates. Mm-hmm. So now let's fast forward over the years, and I'm sure you had other leadership opportunities, but in your current role as the boss sitting in the big chair, what are the big things that you focus on every day as a leader of a growing company?
So one of the things I say a lot, I say to my employees and I say to anybody who asks, that my biggest job within the firm is to make sure everyone else has what they need to do their jobs. So a lot of my time in the last 3.5 years has been spent looking at our space. And so we moved because I thought if we were we had 2 offices after our acquisition. I didn't think that was working well for everyone. So we went out and found new space, and we got everyone together under one roof. And we did lighting studies to make sure we had the right kind of lighting for everyone to do, that we weren't exhausting eyes because we worked some long hours during busy season. Technology, we've invested very heavy in technology to make sure our people have the right tools, and if not the most current, at least up there in the realm of pretty current tools, the best tools that are on the market to do the work that we do. Listening to employees about clients they don't like to work with or that aren't good fits for us, and getting rid of those clients that are energy takers from our employees versus energy givers. Those are the things that I focus on.
And on that last point, I'm really interested in that, because we all have had like the toxic customer, but sometimes, I can think of one in my past they were so big, and to get rid of them was so hard. So what do you find when you actually handle that for your team? What are the dividends for you? Like, what makes it worse saying, oh yeah, well, this is a big client, but they're killing my people, so bye-bye. What's the payoff for that for you?
For us, and what we've found is having happy employees pays off. We collect so much better. We do so much better on all the work. They work better. Yeah. They work faster. They work more efficiently than when they're bogged down and emotionally strained because of clients that are hard to work with. They call it culling in our industry. Our client culling, 2 years ago, we culled 150 clients, and by 9 months into the year, we'd added 175 back. It has paid off well for us. Creating a little bit of room to add new clients has let us pick up clients we really want to have. And so that I try not to focus on what we've let walk out the door and more focus on what we've made room to walk back in.
But it kind of reminds me what you talked about before about the importance of culture in an acquisition, also the importance of culture in your client selection. And you've grown enough where you have some liberties with that to say, I don't think you're a good fit for us. But it really pays dividends because it actually feeds right back into your culture and what you're trying to grow. And when you're attracting clients, I can just imagine what the pitch is, to an employee. We're going to teach you accounting, and we fire all the really nasty clients. You're going to like this job.
Love it. It's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
You tell them that. It's one of those things that sounds super trite and super weird, but it has made a huge difference with culture and just everyone's feeling toward things. Everybody gets 3 a year that they don't have to have a reason. It's just, I don't want them to be a client here anymore. Obviously, there would be some exceptions to that. But once you go over 3, you have to have a business case for me why they can't be a client anymore.
Nice. That is so great. Yeah. So harkening back to kind of that first leadership role on the team, what did you pull from that is still really relevant for you today?
I do think in accounting, the value of hard work, of being willing to say, we can work really hard for a short period of time to see a payoff, because there is a lot of that in the accounting profession when you think about how a tax season especially goes, where there's such a concentrated amount of work between March 1st and April 15th, that we can auger in, we can push through, we can work really hard right now, and we'll see the dividends later.
Yeah. And another question I have for you, because I run into this a lot, and a lot of my clients are like this. They're people who are really good at what they do. They're a great accountant. They're a great marketer. They're a great public relations person, right? And they're really good at that. Their business grows because they're really good at it. And then they hire a couple of people. They hire a couple more. And then suddenly they're having to get things done through other people. And in some cases, people that they don't talk to every day because they report to somebody else. And I'm guessing as you went through your degree programs, there was no leadership accounting class. What kind of helped you develop leadership skills when you were at, when what you were trained to be and what you were good at was being an accountant? How did that leadership layer play in over time?
I was lucky because I was a captain in high school and I was a coxswain in college and, some of those things. And then I started my career with Ernst & Young, and yes, our training was about being an accountant, but they trained a lot of soft skills in those big firms. I am still such a big advocate of accounting majors going straight into the Big Four and doing 3 to 5 to 7 years there. The way they train and what they teach, it just cannot be replicated in a smaller firm environment.
Yeah.
There, by the time you're in your second year, you're already doing a little bit of supervision over first year accountants. And by the time you're starting your third year, they're what they call a senior, and you're supervising teams of staff, and they pull you through that very quickly. But they set you up with mentors, and they do a lot of teaching of soft skills.
Love it. Okay. I always like to wrap up, Cassie, with the one question. You can travel back in time. You don't get to go meet Winston Churchill. You can do that after this. But if you could go back in time to that young Cassie, what's the one piece of advice you would give her that would have made leadership easier to bear, easier to do, made her a better leader?
I probably should have listened more when they were teaching soft skills early on. There's a meme out there that's like, I'm what is that? I'm not aggressive. I have leadership skills or whatever. And it's girls. And I maybe leaned into that a little bit too hard, overcorrected a little bit. Probably could have been a little softer, I think.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, Cassie, thank you for sharing your story today. If people want to find you, connect with you, do business with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I am on LinkedIn. Our firm is Haines, Isenbarger Skiba LLC. We do have a website. It's hainescpa.com.
Okay.
Any of those.
We will drop all those links in the show notes. Again, thanks, Cassie, for sharing the story of your executive evolution. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. It was fun.
I really appreciate that interview with Cassie Dunn. So often I talk about, and I mentioned this in the podcast, that a lot of times people in highly specialized areas like law, accounting, marketing are people who are really passionate and good at the work, but then leadership is a whole different layer. And I was so glad to have someone on who could speak to that today and how to make that transition. As always, I like to break down the key takeaways for me from the interview in the areas of confidence, competence, and calm. In the area of confidence, I want to come back to the confidence that the right direction for her business was to build the right culture, and then extending that to having clients that are a right cultural fit for her organization. So much so that she has confidence she's so right on culture that she would rather lose the client than disrupt the balance that she's created in the organization. And that takes a lot of confidence in knowing your approach is the right one. In the area of competence, I thought this was great that her advice for her younger self was pay more attention to the soft skills. We don't often think of that soft skill training, but so often most of the issues that I run into with leadership around my clients come back to those soft skills. Pay attention, develop those. They are going to be such an important asset for you in your leadership career. And then finally, in the area of calm, and I have this experience because I've been in these groups and I coach these groups of other leaders, of peers, who are there in a group coaching experience, mastermind, whatever you want to call it, that are there for mutual support, mutual encouragement, and really accountability. Because when you're running the practice, you have accountability to yourself, but having a group to which you're accountable to, which you can gain advice from, really helps you maintain your calm as you go through the day-to-day and year-to-year of running your business. So thanks again, Cassie, for sharing the story of your executive evolution. We have all the links for her information in the show notes. Remember, you can go from being an accidental leader to the greatest leader of all time. All it takes is developing your confidence, competence, and calm. See you next time on Executive Evolution.